This video is going to touch a little bit about the Second Amendment and what it protects. I mean, I think this is one of those amendments that everybody kind of knows. This is the one that protects the right to bear arms. But one of the problems with the Second Amendment is with the wording and how the founding fathers didn't really do us any favors with how complicated the wording is to deal with sort of like modern debates over the amendment. So we start by showing us a quick clip from CNN that kind of goes over this.
The Second Amendment may be the single most mysterious part of the Constitution. It's an ungrammatical sentence. It refers to militias, which don't even exist anymore, and it's been the subject of an intense controversy. The Second Amendment has two parts. The first part talks about state militias. It says that state militias are a necessary part of national defense. And the second part refers to the right to keep and bear arms. The question of how the two relate is something people are still debating. Militias were effectively how the United States raised armies in the early days of the Republic. There were essentially more or less volunteer forces of young men who fought for their states and fought for the country in what were called militias. Starting about 20 years ago, a lot of conservatives, especially in the National Rifle Association, started to say, look, the Second Amendment has been misinterpreted by the courts. It is not just about state militias. It's about individuals' right to keep and bear arms. And the National Rifle Association, academics associated with it, other academics started writing and arguing for an individual right to keep and bear arms. This question about what the Second Amendment means has one final arbiter, and that's the Supreme Court of the United States. In 2008, the Supreme Court said there was an individual right to keep and bear a handgun in your home. Justice Scalia's opinion in the 2008 Heller case said also the government can regulate dangerous and unusual weapons. Well, what's a dangerous and unusual weapon? We don't really know. Is an assault weapon? Maybe. Is it tank? I think it's safe to say yes. I don't think the Supreme Court is going back at this point. The court is not going to make a 180-degree turn on the Second Amendment, but they could certainly confine the right to keep and bear arms.
All right. So the bottom line is that if you just like paid attention during the quick little video and what it has to say, it's really not until 2008 when the Supreme Court really decides the wording of the Second Amendment means that individuals have the right to own like a gun. And that was in the case of DC versus Heller, where somebody was challenging like Washington DC's handgun ban. So that was in 2008. The Supreme Court basically said that individuals have the right to own a gun. And that was dealing with like the federal government couldn't prevent that because Washington DC is part of like the federal government, kind of unusual. Whereas in 2010, 2 years later, there was a similar citizen claiming that Chicago, which is part of like a legitimate state, Illinois, was also preventing individuals from owning a gun. And the Supreme Court also agreed that like states can't prevent individuals from the right to bear arms. So again, for most of our country's history, it hasn't been the view of the Supreme Court that individuals have the right to own a gun. It's only been in the last like 10 to 15 years that's been the established view of the courts. And as you saw, the Supreme Court has recognized the government could regulate the right to some degree, but that sort of has brought on a whole other series of arguments. So this is some of the controversy surrounding the Second Amendment and its wording.